The world never plays fair. You already know that, even if you pretend not to. You try to be honest, respectful, loyal, and someone still finds a way to twist your kindness into a weakness. The harsh truth is simple. The game starts long before you even realize you're in it, and most people are not playing to be good. They are playing to win. You feel it every time someone smiles at you while quietly pushing their own agenda forward. You feel it when your effort is ignored, when your good intentions are drowned out, when someone with less talent but more cunning passes you by. Here is the part most people never say out loud. Survival today belongs to the ones who see the world as it is, not as they wish it would be. You have seen how the loud crumble. You have watched the emotional break. You have seen the innocent get used like tools, but the ones who rise, they are the ones who study the psychology moving beneath every interaction, every decision, every silence. They survive because they understand that fairness is a story, not a strategy. And the ones who survive long enough eventually learn how to rule their environment instead of being ruled by it. That is where Machiavelli enters. He understood something most people still refuse to accept. Real power is not about shouting, controlling, or intimidating. Real power is about dark intelligence. Dark intelligence is the quiet awareness that sees everything but speaks only when the moment gives you leverage. It is the discipline to watch without reacting, to listen without exposing, to plan without revealing your hand. It is the kind of strategic consciousness that moves through the world like a shadow, unnoticed until the moment of impact. And when it strikes, it never wastes a second blow. But before we dive deeper, let me be absolutely clear. These laws are not for harming others. These laws are not for manipulation without conscience. These laws are meant to protect you from the predators who already know how the game works. If you have ever trusted too fast, forgiven too easily, or spoken more than you should have, then you already know what happens when you enter a ruthless world with a soft strategy. What you are about to learn gives you armor, not claws. By the time you finish this, you will understand why genius-level power is almost never loud, emotional, or reactive. You will feel a shift inside you. You will see the world differently. And you will start behaving in ways that make others wonder what changed in you. Drop this affirmation in the comments to lock it in. I choose strategic power over emotional weakness. Now let's unlock the laws Machiavelli tried to warn you about. Silence is not emptiness. It is pressure building beneath the surface. You are not waiting to speak. You are choosing not to, because in that stillness you gather intelligence, you test intentions, you let others expose their hand, while yours stays hidden. Most people treat silence like a gap to be filled, a flaw in the rhythm of conversation. But you treat it like currency. You spend it deliberately. You let it stretch just long enough to make others nervous. And when they scramble to fill it, they give you everything, their insecurities, their assumptions, their hidden agendas. Machiavelli once said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally, and the first act of wisdom. Knowing when not to act, knowing when not to speak." Here is what actually happens in most interactions. Someone asks you a question, not out of curiosity, but to place you, to fit you into a box they can predict. Your instinct is to answer fully, to prove you are trustworthy, to show you have nothing to hide. But that is precisely how you become readable, and once you are readable, you become usable. Let me walk you through a real scenario. You are in a meeting. Your colleague, the one who always talks over others, turns to you mid-discussion and says, "What do you think about this proposal?" Not because they value your input, but because they want to see if you'll contradict the boss, if you'll hesitate, if you'll reveal doubt. Most people panic, and over-explain. They say, well, I like the idea, but I'm worried about the timeline, and maybe the budget is tight. And honestly, last quarter's rollout was messy, and just like that, they've handed over 3 vulnerabilities in one breath. But you pause, not an awkward pause, not a frozen one, a deliberate one. You let your eyes settle, you let your expression remain neutral, not cold, not warm, just unreadable. Then you say, I'm still gathering my thoughts. What's your read on the risks? Notice what just happened. You did not lie. You did not evade, you redirected. And now they are the one answering. They are the one exposed. They are the one revealing whether they're truly confident or just posturing. That is the mechanics of calculated silence. It is not refusal to engage, it is elevation of engagement to a level where you control the frame, the pace, the depth. Most people speak to be accepted, they chatter to prove they belong. They overshare to seem open and honest, but honesty without strategy is vulnerability without defense. Instead, you speak to clarify only when clarity serves your position. You speak to influence only when influence is possible. You remain silent to observe always. Think about the most commanding person you know. Chances are, they are not the loudest. They are the one who enters a room and says 3 sentences in 10 minutes, and everyone leans in when they do. Why? Because their words carry weight. And weight comes from scarcity. Every unnecessary word you speak dilutes your presence. Every reactive comment you make gives others material to use against you later. This does not mean you become a ghost. It does not mean you withdraw from life. It means you stop speaking from impulse and start speaking from intention. In professional settings, silence makes you appear more competent even when you say less. Studies show people who pause before answering complex questions are rated as more intelligent and trustworthy, not because they knew more, but because they signaled control. In personal relationships, silence disarms drama. When someone provokes you, why didn't you text me back? And you do not fire back with justification, but simply hold space. Something remarkable happens. The aggressor begins to question themselves. The emotional charge collapses without fuel. And in social arenas, silence makes you magnetic. People project onto quietness what they wish were true. Depth, mystery, confidence. You do not have to manufacture charisma. You simply stop interrupting its natural formation. The key principle here is this. Silence is not passive. It is the most active form of psychological positioning. It is the space where strategy breathes. It is where you decide, not react. And when you master this, conversations no longer happen to you. They happen through you. You become the filter, not the filter's victim, but never use silence to punish. Never withhold speech out of spite or passive aggression. That is not power. That is insecurity in disguise. Calculated silence is calm, it is steady. It is anchored in purpose, not resentment. If your silence makes you feel superior, you have missed the point. If it makes you feel safe, you are on the right path. Remember still, water runs deepest, not because it hides what's below, but because it refuses to be stirred by every passing wind. Predictability is surrender. The moment someone can map your reactions, your anger, your generosity, your loyalty, they own a piece of your future. You become a script they can recite in advance. Predictable people are easy to manipulate because their behavior leaks intention like a cracked dam. They always apologize first. They always say yes to avoid conflict. They always defend themselves too quickly. And because of that, others learn exactly how far they can push until one day The line is gone, and the person is left wondering, how did I end up here? Machiavelli once said, "A prince ought to have no other aim or thought than war and its rules and discipline." And in the modern psychological battlefield, the most potent weapon is not force. It is uncertainty. Not chaos, not randomness, but deliberate, controlled unpredictability. Let me show you how this plays out in real time. Imagine you are negotiating a raise. Your manager expects resistance. You've been quiet for months, overworked, under-acknowledged. The script in their head says, you'll hesitate, then plead your case emotionally, then accept whatever they offer to avoid tension. So they come prepared with deflection tactics, budget constraints, team equity, timing. But what if, instead of following that path, you respond with calm disinterest, not anger, not desperation? You say, "I appreciate you bringing this up. I've been evaluating my alignment with the company's direction, and I'll circle back once I have clarity." No demand, no timeline, no visible need. Suddenly, the power shifts. They no longer control the narrative. They don't know if you're about to quit, pivot, or double down, and in that fog of uncertainty, they begin to negotiate with themselves, imagining worst-case scenarios, recalculating your value, wondering what they'll lose if you walk. That is not manipulation. That is recalibration of perception. Most people operate on emotional autopilot. When criticized, they justify. When ignored, they chase. When betrayed, they collapse or explode, always in ways others have already anticipated. But unpredictability disrupts the loop. It forces the other person to engage with you, not their assumption of you. Take a personal example. Someone cancels plans last minute again. The expected response? Disappointment, maybe a guilt trip. "You always do this," or passive compliance, "It's fine, no worries." Both responses reinforce the pattern. Instead, you reply with lightness and zero attachment. "No problem, I actually ended up having a great solo evening. Let me know next time you're truly available." No shame. No anger, no reward for flakiness, but also no punishment that invites drama. You've broken the cycle not by fighting it, but by refusing to play the expected role, and now they are unsettled. Because they can't rely on your reaction to soothe their conscience or feed their ego, this does not mean you become erratic or unreliable. Unpredictability is not about being flaky. It is about being unforecastable. Reliability and predictability are not the same thing. You can be someone who always follows through, but never in the way people assume you will. You can be generous, but on your terms, at your timing. You can be firm, but with unexpected grace. You can walk away, but with a smile, not a slam. Think of historical figures who mastered this. Cesare Borgia did not win through brute force alone. He won because no rival could anticipate whether he would pardon, betray, or elevate an ally. And that uncertainty paralyzed opposition before battle even began. In modern life, the same principle applies. The entrepreneur who turns down a lucrative deal not out of refusal, but because the timing doesn't align with my next phase, suddenly becomes more valuable. The partner who doesn't retaliate after an argument, but instead disappears for 2 days of quiet reflection, returns not weaker, but more centered, more sovereign. What happens when you master this? People stop trying to control you, because control requires predictability. They stop testing your boundaries, because your responses don't follow a pattern they can exploit. You become, in psychological terms, unhookable, not because you're closed off, but because you refuse to be a stimulus response machine. But never confuse unpredictability with deception. Never lie to manufacture mystery. That creates fragility, not strength. Unpredictability built on truth is unshakable. Built on lies, it collapses at first scrutiny. Your actions must remain consistent with your values, just not with others' expectations of how those values should look in practice. Remember, storms are predictable in their violence. Oceans are unpredictable in their depth. And it is the ocean that outlasts every storm. Detachment is not indifference. It is not coldness. It is not the retreat of the wounded. It is the deliberate unclenching of your grip on outcomes you cannot control, so your hands are free to shape the ones you can. Most people suffer not because things go wrong, but because they tie their self-worth to how things turn out. You invest hours in a project, and when it's overlooked, you feel worthless. You confess feelings to someone, and when they pull away, you feel broken. You make a bold move, and when it fails, you retreat for months. That is not failure. That is over-attachment masquerading as passion. Machiavelli once said, "The wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men and imitate those who have been supreme." And what did the greats understand that modern emotionality obscures? That power flows to those who remain functional inside the storm, not those who dissolve into it. Here is the psychological trap most fall into. They confuse investment with entanglement. They think caring deeply means suffering deeply, and so they wear their pain like a badge of authenticity. But deep care and emotional fusion are not the same thing. You can care fiercely about your work, your relationships, your growth, and still refuse to let the outcome hijack your nervous system. Let me illustrate with a concrete case. You pitch an idea to leadership. You've rehearsed, you've researched, you believe in it, and they reject it, not with critique, but with disinterest. The attached mind spirals. Was I not good enough? Did I sound naive? Do they not see my value? And for days, your mood darkens. Your confidence dips. You hesitate on the next opportunity. But the strategically detached mind, it registers the rejection data point, not destiny. It asks, what did I learn? Who truly holds decision power here? What narrative did they respond to or ignore? And within hours, it's refining the pitch for a different audience, a different angle. Not because it doesn't care, but because it refuses to let one event colonize its future. Most people reward effort with expectation. They give, then wait silently, desperately for reciprocation, recognition, fairness, and when it doesn't come, they feel cheated. Instead, you reward effort with completion. You give because the act aligns with your standard, not because you've placed a bet on the return. Think about a friendship where you've always been the one to initiate. The attached version of you texts again and again, hoping this time they'll match your energy, until resentment builds. The detached version, it initiates once, then observes. If the pattern holds, it doesn't rage or ghost. It simply reallocates attention elsewhere, without drama, without self-pity. Not out of punishment, but precision. You stop pouring into vessels that cannot hold. And in that release, you regain power not over them, but over your own energy economy in professional contexts. Detachment makes you dangerous in the best sense. When layoffs hit, the attached panic. They leak desperation in interviews, over-negotiate, accept anything. The detached assess, what do I truly need? What leverage do I still hold? Where is the real opportunity now? They negotiate from stillness, not starvation. In negotiations, the attached fear deadlock. They concede to avoid tension. The detached embrace impasse as leverage. Silence is not failure, it's pressure. And in leadership, the attached leader takes criticism personally, defends reflexively, loses authority in the process. The detached leader hears the critique, separates intent from delivery, and asks, "Is there truth here I can use?" Then acts or discards without ego tremor. But never mistake detachment for disengagement. You can be fully present, deeply committed, emotionally alive, and still refuse to be blackmailed by uncertainty. You love someone, but you do not orbit their moods. You pursue a goal, but you do not mortgage your peace to its timeline. You fight for what matters, but you do not let loss define your identity. This does not mean suppressing emotion. It means refusing to let emotion override strategy. Feel the disappointment. Then decide, does this feeling serve my next move or sabotage it? Never detach so completely that you lose your humanity. Never use detachment as a shield to avoid vulnerability altogether. That is not strength. It is fear in monk's robes. True strategic detachment is warm-blooded, it breathes, it chooses, it loves, but never begs. It hopes but never depends. Remember the archer who trembles with need, misses the target. The one who releases the arrow with steady hands and lets the wind decide the rest that one hits the mark again and again. Appearance is not deception, it is architecture. You are not hiding who you are. You are designing how, when, and to whom your truths are revealed. Most people mistake authenticity for full exposure, as if integrity means broadcasting every doubt, every desire, every wound without filter. But that is not honesty, that is impulsivity dressed in moral language. Machiavelli understood this with chilling clarity. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. And in that gap between appearance and reality lies the space where influence is built, trust is earned on your terms, and power is preserved." You do not owe the world your raw edges. You owe it a version of yourself that serves your purpose, protects your peace, and advances your position. Let me show you how uncontrolled appearance backfires. You walk into a room after a sleepless night, stress etched on your face, voice flat, shoulders tight. You think, this is me, real, raw, human, and in some contexts that works. But in others, especially high-stakes ones, you've just signaled vulnerability before the game has even begun. People don't see honesty. They see instability, they see someone who can be swayed, pressured, or sidelined. Now imagine instead, you wake up exhausted, yes. But before you step out, you splash cold water, stand tall for 30 seconds in front of the mirror, smooth your clothes, and choose 3 words to anchor your energy steady. Here, present. You enter the same room, same fatigue, different signal, same truth filtered through intention. That is not faking, that is framing. Most people overshare to build connection. They confess anxieties to strangers, vent frustrations in group chats, reveal insecurities to acquaintances, all in the name of being real. But connection built on premature disclosure is fragile. It invites pity, not respect. It invites exploitation, not alliance. Instead, you reveal selectively like a curator, not a confessional. You match depth to trust, not to impulse. At a networking event, someone asks, "How's work?" The unguarded answer, "Ugh, it's brutal. My boss micromanages. Deadlines are insane. I'm thinking of quitting." Instant red flag. The controlled appearance answer, "It's demanding, but I'm learning how to operate at a higher level of complexity. Actually, I've been studying how leaders sustain performance under pressure. How about you?" Same reality, opposite impression. One invites opportunism. The other invites respect and subtly positions you as someone who evolves under stress. This extends far beyond words. Your appearance includes your posture. Slumping says, "I am burdened." Grounded stillness says, "I am occupied, but not overwhelmed." It includes your tone, sharp urgency, signals reactivity, measured pace signals command. It includes your environment. Cluttered desk whispers chaos. Intentional minimalism whispers control. Even your digital footprint is appearance. The photos you post, the causes you highlight, the silences you keep, all compose a narrative. You do not curate to lie. You curate to steer. You let people see the door, but you decide which rooms they enter. In professional advancement, controlled appearance is career acceleration. The colleague who vents about leadership in the break room becomes the problem. The one who voices concerns in private, solution-oriented language to the right person at the right time becomes the strategic thinker. In relationships, it prevents unnecessary erosion. You do not weaponize silence, but you do not dump your entire emotional inventory on someone before they've proven they can hold it. You let trust earn depth, not demand it up front. And in public life, social media, speaking, leadership, you become a symbol people can project hope onto, because you've withheld enough to remain enigmatic, yet revealed enough to feel human. But never let appearance become armor so thick it suffocates you. Never perform so relentlessly that you forget your own voice. Controlled appearance should cost you energy, yes, but not your soul. If maintaining it feels like constant acting, you've crossed the line. The goal is alignment, not contradiction. Your outer form should reflect an aspect of your inner truth, not deny it entirely. You are not one thing, but you are not everything to everyone. This does not mean you become sterile or robotic. Warmth, humor, passion, they all have their place, but you deploy them with timing. You laugh loudly among allies. You listen intently among strangers. You speak boldly when stakes demand it. You stay quiet when observation serves better. Remember, a statue does not reveal its weight by shouting, it reveals it by standing, unmoved, while the wind howls around it. People do not need to see your foundations, they only need to feel their strength. Information is not just power, it is the architecture of power. The difference between being led and leading lies, not in title, not in charisma, but in who holds the unseen pieces of the puzzle. Most people move through the world reacting to what is spoken, what is shown, what is declared, while the truly influential move in response to what is hidden, implied, or withheld. You do not need to control every variable. You only need to understand more variables than those around you, Machiavelli once said. A wise ruler ought never to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interest. And while that sounds ruthless, the deeper truth is this: he understood that blind loyalty to truth without regard for timing, audience, or consequence hands control. To those who manipulate truth more skillfully, information supremacy is not about hoarding secrets. It is about mastering the flow, knowing what to gather, what to share, what to delay, and what to bury. Let me show you how information asymmetry plays out in real time. You are in a team meeting discussing a new initiative. Your manager says, "We're all aligned on the direction." Most people nod, trusting the statement at face value, but you notice the senior designer has not spoken. You recall she privately questioned the feasibility last week. You see her glance at the engineering lead, who subtly shakes his head. That tiny exchange missed by everyone else is data. It tells you alignment is theatrical, not factual. And now you have leverage. You can either expose the fracture, risky, early, or wait, gather more, and position yourself as the one who bridges the gap later, when the cracks widen. That is information supremacy, seeing the subtext beneath the script. Most people treat information like oxygen, assume it's freely available and equally distributed. They ask surface questions. They accept first explanations. They confuse volume for depth-scrolling headlines, consuming hot takes, mistaking noise for insight. Instead, you interrogate gently. You ask what led to that conclusion, instead of, do you agree? You listen for omissions. What isn't said is often more revealing than what is. You track patterns over time. Who always downplays risk? Who inflates urgency? Whose optimism spikes just before a decision they benefit from? You do not need to be paranoid. You only need to be observant. In professional settings, information supremacy makes you indispensable. The employee who knows not just their tasks, but the client's unspoken priorities, the budget's real constraints, the hidden friction between departments. That person becomes the quiet hub decisions flow through. They are not promoted because they shout the loudest, but because they know the most and share it strategically. In negotiations, the side that understands the other's walkaway point, their internal deadlines, their reputational stakes, that side wins even with weaker formal leverage. In personal life, it prevents betrayal. When a friend says, "I've always supported you," but you remember 3 times they minimized your wins, you do not confront. You recalibrate trust. You stop sharing vulnerabilities they've proven unfit to hold. But this is not about spying or scheming. It is about disciplined curiosity. Read beyond the headline. Ask follow-ups without accusation. Help me understand how that fits with what you said last month. Watch body language not to catch lies, but to detect discomfort, which often signals truth. The person isn't ready to voice. Cross-reference stories. Does this version match what others described? Inconsistencies are not proof of deceit. They are invitations to deeper inquiry. Never let information become a weapon of humiliation. Never expose what you know, to wound, to dominate, to shame. That turns supremacy into sabotage and isolates you in the long run. Use insight to navigate, not to annihilate. To protect, not to punish. To build systems where truth serves function, not ego. This does not mean you become secretive by default. It means you respect the timing of truth. Some knowledge is meant to be shared slowly like medicine, not poison. Some truths are meant for action, not announcement. Some silences are acts of mercy. Remember, the chess master does not win by moving first. They win by seeing 7 moves ahead and letting the opponent believe they are in control until the trap is already sprung. You do not need to speak louder. You only need to know more, and then wait for the moment when knowing becomes doing. Calm is not the absence of pressure. It is pressure refined into focus. Most people mistake intensity for strength, noise for authority, reaction for readiness. They shout to be heard, panic to prove they care, rush to show they're capable. But in crisis, in chaos, in confrontation, the ones who rise are not the loudest. They are the still ones, the ones whose breathing does not shorten, whose voice does not rise, whose eyes do not dart. They do not suppress emotion, they metabolize it, transmute it into clarity. Machiavelli observed, the prince must be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. But he left unsaid the third animal, the owl. The one who watches, perched above the fray, seeing patterns in the dark while others flail in the light. Calm dominance is that owl energy, quiet, observant, unshaken, not because nothing matters, but because everything matters too much to waste on hysteria. Here is what happens in real time when calm meets chaos. A client explodes in a call, voice shaking, accusations flying, demanding immediate resolution. The reactive team scrambles, one person over-apologizes, another defends too hard, a third freezes, energy fractures. Trust erodes, but you let the outburst crest, no interruption, no visible recoil. When the silence lands, you speak slowly, evenly. You hear how serious this is for you. Let's figure out what needs to happen next, starting with what would make you feel heard right now. No defensiveness, no performative empathy, just grounded presence. And in that moment, the client's nervous system begins to sync with yours, not because you agreed, but because you refused to escalate. You became the container, not the content. That is calm dominance, not avoiding tension, but holding it so others can exhale inside it. Most people equate urgency with importance. They respond to every ping, every crisis, every opinion, as if delay equals failure. They leak anxiety in their tone, their pace, their punctuation texts full of exclamation points and fragmented sentences. Meetings started without agenda, because we just need to talk now. But urgency without direction is panic in a suit. Instead, you calibrate response to consequence, not volume. A server goes down. Assess impact before mobilizing. A rumor spreads. Verify sources before reacting. A colleague lashes out. Wait, was that about you or about the sleepless night they just had? Calm dominance means you do not confuse motion with progress. You move deliberately, not desperately. In leadership, this is non-negotiable. Teams do not follow the most knowledgeable person. They follow the most stable one. When layoffs loom, the leader who speaks with steady gravity even while acknowledging pain inspires loyalty. The one who leaks stress in hallway whispers or cryptic emails breeds paranoia. In conflict, calm dominance disarms aggression. When someone raises their voice, you lower yours, not as submission, but as reclamation of space. You say, I want to understand this fully. Can we slow down for a moment? And suddenly, they are the one who looks unhinged. You did not win the argument. You redefined the arena. In personal life, it builds unshakable trust. Your partner is spiraling after a bad day. The attached version matches their energy. Why are you like this? I'm stressed too, and now two fires burn. The calm, dominant version makes tea, sits nearby, says nothing until asked. Then, do you need space, solutions, or just to be heard? No fixing? No fixing, just presence. And in that safety, their storm passes faster, not because you stopped it, but because you refused to feed it. But never confuse calm with passivity. Calm dominance is active containment. It takes immense energy to hold space without collapsing into it. It is not numbness. It is nerve endings trained to fire after assessment, not before. Never use calm to avoid accountability. I'm just being chill while neglecting responsibilities. That is evasion. Calm dominance acts decisively, ethically, without theatrics. This does not mean you never express anger, grief, or joy. It means you choose the container for those emotions. Rage in your journal, grief with your therapist, joy with your inner circle, not in boardrooms, group chats, or public confrontations where raw emotion becomes ammunition. Remember, the earthquake does not announce itself with noise. It announces itself with stillness, the eerie quiet before the ground moves. People do not follow the tremor. They follow the one who stands, feet planted, already calculating the exit routes. Stay calm not because you are unfeeling, but because you feel deeply enough to protect what matters. Outcomes do not care about your intentions. They do not care about your effort. They do not care about your fairness, your sleepless nights, your good heart, or your moral high ground. The world runs on results, and if you are not obsessed with the endgame, someone else is, and they will collect what you built while you were busy feeling justified. Most people confuse motion with progress. They send the email, attend the meeting, voice the opinion, and call that doing the work. But work without outcome is performance. Effort without result is theater. Machiavelli was ruthless on this point. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Not because he glorified fear, but because he understood that sentiment is fragile, temporary, and easily overridden by self-interest. Outcomes, however, are durable, measurable, undeniable. Outcome obsession is not coldness. It is the refusal to let your life be decided by people who care less about you than you do. Let me show you how outcome blindness plays out. You collaborate on a project for months, researching, drafting, revising. You pride yourself on being easy to work with, accommodating every suggestion. Launch day comes, the presentation is polished, the team claps, and your name? Buried in the appendix slide. You feel betrayed, but you said yes to every change. You avoided conflict to keep things smooth. Meanwhile, your colleague who pushed back on scope demanded co-lead credit early and quietly documented every contribution is now being praised as the driving force. You were kind, they were strategic, and kindness without outcome is just unpaid labor. Outcome obsession means you ask before you begin, what does success look like? Who decides? How will credit be assigned? What happens if we fail? Not out of distrust, but out of devotion to the result. Most people fall in love with the process and forget the purpose. They journal daily, but never change behavior. They read books on leadership, but never speak up in meetings. They network constantly, but never ask for the introduction that matters. Effort without direction is exhaustion in disguise. Instead, you anchor every action to a tangible outcome. Not vague hopes want to grow, but concrete markers. By quarter 3, I will lead a project with budget authority, or within 6 months, I will have 3 advocates in senior leadership who proactively recommend me. You reverse engineer from the finish line. What skill must be acquired? What relationship must be deepened? What perception must shift? And then you prune everything that doesn't serve that line. In negotiations, outcome obsession means you never confuse agreement with victory. You can walk out of a conversation, liked, respected, even admired, and still have lost. The deal favors them. The timeline harms you. The fine print erodes your leverage. Outcome obsession asks, did I move closer to my objective or just to a comfortable illusion of progress? In relationships, it prevents slow erosion. You do not stay because we've been through so much. You stay only if the shared future you want is actively being built. If it isn't, no amount of history justifies stagnation. In personal development, it kills vanity metrics, 10,000 followers, but zero influence, a packed schedule, but no meaningful impact. You measure what matters, trust earned, value delivered, boundaries held, momentum sustained, but never let outcome obsession turn you into a machine. Never sacrifice integrity for expediency. Machiavelli warned rulers against being hated not because cruelty is wrong, but because it breeds rebellion. The same applies to you. Win without generating enemies who have nothing left to lose. Achieve without burning the ecosystem that sustains you. Dominate without isolation. Outcome obsession without ethics is short-term theft. It takes now, but destroys later. This does not mean you become transactional in every interaction. You can be generous, kind, patient, and still demand that generosity leads somewhere, that kindness is reciprocated in substance, that patience is honored with growth. You do not punish people for not meeting your goals. You simply stop investing where outcomes are consistently neglected. Never mistake activity for achievement. Never confuse being busy with being effective. The world will always reward results, not reasons. Remember, the river does not care how hard the water struggled. It only carves the canyon where the current ended up. You do not have to be ruthless. You only have to be relentless about where you are going and why it matters. Stay obsessed not with winning over people, but with winning the future you deserve. You'll just walk through 7 laws, not theories, not platitudes, but psychological architectures forged in the furnace of real power. Calculated silence, unpredictability, strategic detachment, controlled appearance, information supremacy, calm dominance, outcome obsession. These are not tricks, they are transformations. And if even one of them made your stomach tighten, your breath pause, your mind whisper, this changes everything good, that is the sound of armor forming. But knowledge without action is just entertainment dressed in wisdom, and you did not come here to be entertained. You came here because you were tired of being outmaneuvered by people who play the game while you kept waiting for fairness to arrive. So here is your assignment. Simple, non-negotiable, and surgically precise. Do not try to master all 7 at once. Do not rehearse them in your head for weeks while your life stays the same. Pick one, just one. The one that made you lean forward. The one that exposed a recurring wound. The one that feels just slightly uncomfortable, because that is where growth lives. And for the next 7 days, you practice it not perfectly, but persistently. If it is silence, you pause 2 seconds longer before answering. If it is detachment, you write down an outcome you've been emotionally clinging to and then burn the paper. If it is outcome obsession, you end every workday not with what did I do, but what did I move closer to. Now let me say this with the weight it deserves. These laws are not weapons to dominate the innocent. They are shields to protect the aware. The world is not gentle, and pretending it is only makes you easier to exploit. But wielding dark intelligence without conscience, that is not power. That is pathology in a tailored suit. Use these principles to defend your boundaries, not to invade others, to navigate complexity, not to manufacture suffering. To build systems where merit and strategy can thrive without requiring naivety as the price of entry. The most dangerous person in any room is not the one who lies effortlessly. It is the one who sees the lie, chooses not to feed it, and redirects the energy toward something that lasts. That is the kind of person the world needs more of, not less. There are 2 kinds of people in every system. Those who manipulate using fear, flattery, urgency, or guilt to bend others to their will, and those who cannot be manipulated because they have done the inner work to recognize the levers, refuse the hooks, and respond from choice, not compulsion. This is not about gaining power over others. This is about gaining power over yourself, over your reactions, over your energy, over your narrative, over the story you tell yourself when things go wrong. You are not here to become untouchable. You are here to become unbreakable on your own terms, so I leave you with a choice. Not a test, not a demand. A simple, quiet fork in the road. Will you return to the world, soft, open, and hoping people see your goodness? Or will you return armored not in bitterness, but in clarity, knowing that kindness without strength is an invitation, and strength without kindness is a warning, and you are now learning to hold both at once? If this struck a chord, if even one sentence made you sit up straighter, do three things. Hit like not for the algorithm, but as a signal to yourself. This matters. Subscribe not for more content, but for more recalibration. And in the comments, tell me this. Which law will you practice for the next 7 days? Not which one you liked. Which one you will live. Stay strategic, not calculating. Stay ethical, not naive. Stay powerful, not loud. The world does not reward the most deserving. It rewards the most prepared. And now you are